like Alicia and others potentially much more dangerous. Realizing that the massive power outages kept tens of thousands of you who lived through this thing from seeing what the storm was really like, from viewing the devastation that it wrought, we will, over this next hour, provide you with an opportunity to relive Hurricane Alicia, to see and hear her story.
This program is brought to you in part by Furrow Building Materials and by the Houston Men of Olds.
Why is Houston sold on Olds? Sam White on Southwest Freeway says styling makes Cutlass Supreme America's favorite. Rice Minger on Main is proud of Delta 88's high trade-in value. On Gulf Freeway, Bill McDavid's customers like the handling of Cutlass Sierra. And Dutch Holland in Baytown says Sierra is a great performer. Sal Montgomery on North Freeway reports people appreciate Olds 98's spacious interior. And Wiley Mossy on Katy Freeway says every Oldsmobile is simply an all-around great value.
Houston sold on Olds.
I'm an expert do-it-yourselfer. Need to be nowadays. So maybe I'm not a skilled tradesman, but I do know where to start. Furrow Building Materials.
Honey.
Oh, sure. No matter what the project, at Furrow, I get everything I need in one trip. The quality brand names I insist on, helpful advice, too. Do it myself? Sure, but not without Furrow Building Materials. Oh, and Louise.
Don't do it yourself without us.
Furrow.
There's a trainload of savings coming your way from the Wrangler brand. It's our money-saving deal on Wrangler denim and corduroy jeans. Right now, the more Wrangler jeans you buy, the more money-saving coupons you get toward even more great Wrangler clothes. Up to $30 in savings when you buy men's, women's, boys, or girls' denim or corduroy jeans. But you better hurry. This Wrangler deal won't last for long.
Your nearby Wheeler store has a terrific selection of Wranglers for the whole family.
The skies over Galveston Island last Monday looked something like this. Nice sunny skies, blue skies, balmy temperatures gave no indication of what was to come. Shortly before 5 o'clock on Monday afternoon, our newswire machines gave us our first inkling that we had a problem on our hands. The first tropical storm of the season had been born, not in the familiar Caribbean haunts far, far away, but just a few hundred miles off the upper Texas coast. And the storm had a name. It was called Alicia.
First bulletin, Tropical Storm Alicia located right here, latitude 27.2 north, longitude 91.3 west. Highest winds in the system are about 45 miles per hour. Once again, Alicia is drifting very slowly, less than 10 miles an hour, in a westerly direction with the highest winds of 45 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center in Miami continues to watch it very carefully. There are two factors that will determine the strength and the eventual movement of the storm. Number one, the waters of the Gulf of Mexico are very warm. That would tend to make the storm intensify. Number two, the circulation is fairly close to land. That tends to keep it small. So,
for a lot of people who live along the Texas Gulf Coast, threats of tropical storms and hurricanes were old hat. No major storm had hit Galveston since Carla, and that was back in 1961. Sure, there was Claudette in 1979, and sure, that storm dumped 42 inches of rain on Alvin, but wasn't that one something of a freak? And they reasoned. Look at all the fuss that was generated by Hurricane Allen in 1980. Experts called Allen a killer storm, the second worst storm of the century after more than 200 people died in the Caribbean as that storm headed towards the Gulf. But didn't Allen run away and hide in northeast Mexico after scaring Galveston into a mass evacuation? But still, as the Weather Bureau reports began to take on more and more of an urgency on Tuesday, many of the skeptics began to have second thoughts, and during Live at 5 that evening, there was good reason. By 2 p.m. Tuesday, Alicia's winds had reached 70 miles an hour, and a hurricane watch was declared for the area from Corpus Christi to Grand Isle, Louisiana. 3 hours later, Alicia had become a full-fledged hurricane.
The seas are going to be very high, and people who live along low-lying areas of Galveston Bay and the immediate upper Texas coast should begin to take necessary action. Steve Harnett, who is head of the National Weather Service office in Galveston and Houston, is standing by down in Galveston. Steve, you told us at 5 o'clock that in your opinion it was time for people, especially below a 5-foot elevation, to begin to get out. Is that correct?
Right, and we've had some developments since then. Since then, Galveston County Civil Defense and Galveston City Civil Defense have recommended evacuation to begin for people living in areas which would be subject to tidal flooding or flooding from the sea of tides of 4 to 6 feet. It looks like we could get tides of up to 4 to 6 feet in the area by sunrise tomorrow. Specifically, those areas include the Bolivar Peninsula, the western half of Galveston Island, basically west of the seawall. Also, low-lying areas around Galveston Bay, Kemah Seabrook area, and some of the lower-lying areas around Clear Lake, and also down in Brazoria and Matagorda County, areas subject to 4 to 6 foot, or problems with 4 to 6 foot tide.
But for every person in the danger area who did get out, many declared, in effect, hell no, I won't go.
Are you planning on leaving the island?
No, I'm not.
Why not?
Well, I live here. You don't run away.
The Weather Service says it could get pretty bad here, and it would be a good idea to leave.
Well, some people run into it when they leave, so last time it took some people 12, 14 hours to get 150 miles, and I don't care for that kind of traffic. I live in a safe place.
So you're just going to dig in and hope it doesn't hit you hard?
Yes, I'm just hoping so. It's our elevation is over 12 feet, so we feel like we're safe. Unless we get a tornado, and then where are you safe?
With only the questions of where and when Alicia would strike and with what intensity, with only those questions still remaining, this television newsroom, this TV station, and all other radio and TV stations around this area went on a hurricane watch late Tuesday night. That watch was to last for the next 60 hours. It was our job, our responsibility, to keep you informed minute by minute of the progress of that storm and help you survive it.
Hurricane Alicia has hunkered down.
Will it increase? Will it move in different directions?
Right now, traffic is moving normally along Galveston.
Many civil defense people are going ahead and urging people to evacuate just as a safety precaution. Since our last report to you about an hour ago,
We are told that there will be an 8 to 10-foot storm surge.
And the Weather Service expects it to hit land sometime early in the morning.
shelters have been established in Houston, Dickinson.
The Lynchburg ferry is closed.
4700 block of I-45 South, 4300 block of I-45 Service Road at the...
The news is not so good.
60-foot oak trees that withstood the first wind blow fell down.
One person has been killed in a storm-related accident in Houston. The tree crashed right into her bedroom. These are some of the scenes of power transformers blowing out, power arcing through power lines as they're blown together.
So all of this area south is getting extremely wet this morning and some flooding already taking place.
The worst place to be when a hurricane passes is in the northeast quadrant of the storm. Unfortunately, the hurricane is passing to the southwest of the Houston-Galveston area. Therefore, the northeast quadrant of the storm is what we are experiencing.
And we'll let you know as we continue to watch.
Next door, a pancake restaurant looked more like a battered outdoor cafe.
These are situations that we are finally opening our eyes to and seeing firsthand now after the long night.
This is the latest video that we have from Galveston.
Just a few minutes ago from the Houston Police Department that there was some flying glass in the downtown area.
I was physically knocked to the ground twice by the wind.
Las últimas noticias sobre el huracán Alicia.
I guess this is what is known as the eye of the storm. We've been discussing this now since 7:30 when we went off.
All of that rain area is moving very, very slowly north and northwest.
The downtown Houston area has been under siege from Alicia's winds and rain since before dawn this morning. Windows are missing from almost every single high-rise building. The Hyatt Regency Hotel lost about 75 of its windows.
And over to my left, there is what is left of an establishment.
So for all intents and purposes right now, Galveston is closed off.
And although the storm has moved past the airport, there's still a strong gusty south wind, 36 gusting up to 51 miles per hour. So in the wake of the storm, there's still a lot to think about and look at.
Did it myself. Did it myself.
When you do it yourself, you need the right tools, the right materials, and the right advice. You need us. Furrow, the one store with everything you need.
Oh, I love the deck.
Did it myself.
Oh, really?
Furrow Building Materials. Don't do it yourself without us.
Why is Houston sold on Olds? Sam White on Southwest Freeway says styling makes Cutlass Supreme America's favorite. Rice Minger on Main is proud of Delta 88's high trade-in value. On Gulf Freeway, Bill McDavid's customers like the handling of Cutlass Sierra. And Dutch Holland in Baytown says Sierra is a great performer. Sam Montgomery on North Freeway reports people appreciate Olds 98's spacious interior. And Wiley Mossy on Katy Freeway says every Oldsmobile is simply an all-around great value.
Houston sold on Olds.
Hurricane Alicia did her worst, at least 4 dead. We don't know how many injured. Property damage in the millions of dollars spread over at least a 6-county area, a lot of it caused by the rash of tornadoes spawned by that storm. Widespread flooding sent thousands of people to shelters. Hundreds of thousands of homes are still without electrical power this evening. Some areas have no water. But all in all, we came through this thing in pretty good shape, even though Alicia took the worst possible route through our area, scoring a direct hit here on the city of Houston. When the storm came ashore this morning near San Luis Pass, right around 2 a.m., that placed Galveston and Galveston Bay to the northeast of the center. Resulting high winds and storm-surge tides battered Galveston Island through the night, and that shoved a 10 to 12-foot storm tide into Galveston Bay, causing extensive flooding around Seabrook and Kemah, Baytown, and other communities around Galveston Bay. Most of this area suffered extensive flooding damage, while the wind damage was prevalent throughout much of the rest of the storm's track. Then around mid-morning, the center of Alicia, or what was left of it, passed right on through the city of Houston, continued northward where she is still dumping huge amounts of rain in Montgomery and other counties up to the north of us.
For hours, the hurricane winds bore down on Galveston. By 1 this morning, the force of the blast had risen to 103 miles per hour, and by dawn, a gradual subsiding. But as light finally came, the destruction was evident. Seawall Boulevard was littered with debris from popular beachfront businesses. In the central business district, glass windows were gone and streets were covered for most of the morning by high water. And there were more problems. A fire at an island sulfur plant where firemen had to fight floodwaters before fighting the fire itself. And equally alarming, looters. These men were breaking into a liquor store when they were caught by police. Later, after assessing the damage, city officials had more bad news for those who live here.
There is no electricity on the island, period, exclamation point. If you've been able to drive around the city, you've seen a large number of power lines down. Now, they are unable at this point to identify those line damages. And rather than risk killing anybody or starting any fires or electrocuting anybody or blowing up any equipment, they elected to shut the whole system down.
But almost immediately, residents here began the cleanup that for many consisted of removing debris.
It just wasn't that bad. There was a lot of wind and a lot of rain. But the house was fine, so.
For others, though,
we looked out, everything was just like tearing up.
What was the worst part of it for you?
All this high wind, everything just looked like things were just blowing everywhere.
The hundreds of guests at the Galvez Hotel were trapped when the storm hit. What had been a night of almost fun speculation on whether or not the storm would hit turned into terror.
Going downstairs, there's no front windows.
Alicia's strength had shattered the large glass front of the building in a sudden series of explosions. It was a frightening 5 or 6 hours that followed, a dull roar almost like a freight train going through the building as air rushed through the 72-year-old building at 130 miles an hour. This morning, when we did venture out of the basement, the once luxurious hotel, a shambles of shattered glass and rain-soaked carpeting and furniture. And tonight, this proud old landmark of Galveston will be closed to the public, instead turned over to the Army, to some of the troops who will help in the cleanup effort on the island. In Galveston, Tim Ryan, Eyewitness News.
From Webster to Clear Lake to Seabrook,
The devastation seems endless. The storm turned streets and parking lots into garbage dumps. A floating dock at the Lakewood Yacht Club finally yields to 80-mile-an-hour winds, smashing expensive sailboats into the shore like so many logs in a jam.
You have boats down there?
2 of them, yes.
You think they're any good?
We're hoping. It's just been a long night. We hope everything's left.
Other boats threaten apartment buildings, already swamped with 4 feet of water. Windows are blown out, brick walls are torn to shreds.
This is the section of NASA Road 1 which leads from El Lago to Seabrook. Wind and waves have turned it into a watery junkyard. Even a boat won't do you any good today.
Like dozens of others, Bill and Lynn Scott decided not to evacuate at first. Alicia changed their minds.
Mainly, we were going to stay until we heard there was a 16-foot surge, and that would have put us well out of reach of getting to anything, so I figured we might as well get off now while we could.
Seabrook police say the body of a young Vietnamese man was pulled from the water near Seabrook just before daybreak. His death is being called a drowning. Fire officials also say the storm prevented an ambulance from reaching a heart attack victim who died a short time later. Officials believe the toll would have been higher if not for their round-the-clock evacuation.
We got about 25 out along Toddville. I haven't been down there, but people I've talked to said that that area is just totally gone. It's what completely went underwater, and what didn't go underwater was blown away.
By midday, the tide subsided from NASA Road, and more people were returning home. But authorities stressed it may be another full day before they can reach some people still stranded along the coastline. People who bet their lives against a hurricane named Alicia. Near Seabrook, Tom Cook, Eyewitness News.
Alicia began as a slow-moving storm, then blossomed into havoc. Her arrival was marked by heavy driving rains and gale-like winds. Her departure by widespread destruction. The brutal rains caused power lines to dance and sparkle in the night, then left hundreds of thousands without power. Many areas also had no water or phone service. Power lines were the cause of scattered fires. One huge warehouse blaze sent 13 firefighters to the hospital, apparently overcome by toxic fumes. Another early morning fire consumed the home of an East Houston family. Firefighters said there simply wasn't enough water pressure to save it. Across the city, tornadoes were sighted in Alicia's wake, as were hundreds of broken trees and twisted debris. Airports closed to traffic, hangars bent and twisted, small planes literally upended. Almost everywhere, flooded streets made movement close to impossible. Fortunately, few ventured out to brave it. The damage was universal. Greenway Plaza skyscrapers popped out windows in the high winds, raining down glass. Buildings still under construction scattered debris. Estimates of the damage now climb well into the millions. Signs that Hurricane Alicia was no lady. Melanie Lawson, Eyewitness News.
Alicia's winds caused havoc in the downtown business district. Fears of windows breaking or falling out of giant skyscrapers came true. Hundreds of chunks of glass lined the streets, and every few minutes the sound of more glass striking the pavement echoed through the concrete jungle. To give you an idea of just how dangerous it is downtown with the high winds and the glass falling from the nearby windows, what you're seeing right now is where a piece of glass hit the hood of our automobile. It went right through the metal here in 2 different spots. Our unofficial survey indicated that most buildings were missing some windows. For example, the Hyatt Regency wore the worst scars of the 100-mile-an-hour winds. The Regency lost close to 75 windows, and as a result, hotel officials were forced to evacuate the 500 occupants and move them to several giant ballrooms. And Mayor Kathy Whitmire moved quickly as well. After warning the public about the potential dangers of falling glass during an early morning news conference, she later in the morning ordered Houston police to block off a 20-block area of the downtown until city workers cleaned up the fallen glass. That cleanup should be completed by nightfall. Reporting from downtown Houston, Don Cobos, Eyewitness News.
Right now I have a woman and child on a rooftop. I have an elderly lady that's in pretty bad medical problem. I have a man stranded on the other side, and I have 20 people in a bus.
That was the situation in Channel View along the San Jacinto River at I-10 just before noon today. The river began rising about 4 this morning. That's when Susan Adams, her 2 children, and 2 neighbors decided to leave.
We got up at 3:30 this morning, and in 30 minutes time, it went from below the tires on our truck to over the hood of our truck.
A neighbor who owned a large truck offered to drive the group to safer ground, but the truck overturned and the group had to wade through the river and high currents to safety.
We got out and we walked, we waited, and it was just up to here then, and we just held the kids up and got out.
Were you actually swimming through the water at one point?
Mm-hmm.
How fast was the current moving?
Hard enough to knock you down. If we didn't hold on to all three of us together with the kids and everybody, we just held on to belt loops.
Adam's husband was still in the house when she left. She was frantically trying to direct sheriff's deputies to her home. They were in the area to evacuate 20 people by boat from a church bus stranded in the middle of what used to be a frontage road.
We're all right. Hang on. The weather's awfully bad, though. Dear Lord, is it coming back? And if that's on TV, tell my kids I'm all right.
Okay. What's your name?
My name is Helen Jones.
I-10 east at the San Jacinto River is covered with high water. Traffic is being rerouted along Market Street. Those who could evacuate sought shelter at a local high school. In Channelview, Debbie Johnson, Eyewitness News.
Even though people were advised to stay indoors all day long, some tried to make it anyway, only to find that it was impossible. At the underpass to 225 and Ritchie Road, drivers abandoned cars, a pickup truck, and even a tanker. Truck driver Richard Perales took on the challenge of beating the storm, but he found himself wading through water from his tanker. Many other Pasadena streets, including parts of Red Bluff and Burl Roads, were flooded and impassable. High-velocity winds also took a toll. Several power lines were down, and debris and trees littered the streets. Businesses along Southmore suffered heavy damage. Windows at several establishments were shattered and blown out. This is the multi-story First Pasadena Bank with at least 30 of its windows gone, forced out by powerful winds. In neighboring Deer Park, the mayor declared that town to be in a state of emergency. City officials said they were forced to evacuate City Hall when part of the skylight roof was torn off, leaving them exposed to the rain and winds. Neither Deer Park nor Pasadena reported major injuries or fatalities. No doubt when this is all over, those who suffered losses will be seeking aid. Deer Park officials say they plan to be among the first for whatever is available. In Deer Park, Diana Fallis, Eyewitness News.
Houston's bayous are prone to overflow their banks in normal summertime thunder showers. Hurricane Alicia was anything but normal, but her effects on the city's bayous the same. Officials say many areas should expect higher water through this weekend as the runoff from Hurricane Alicia drains off. Tom Dickerson, Eyewitness News.
This was a beachfront establishment before Alicia. Now it's stairs and a floor and a sofa and a view that never quits. Bo Carroll, who lives next door, says it was the worst storm he's ever seen. One street over from that area was this home demolished by the wind. And the yard of a torn-up surf shop was strewn with its wares. Floodwaters were everywhere, though they were receding by midday, leaving these vehicles buried to the bumpers in sand. Waters brought rattlesnakes out in force. Power lines were down here, as well as in nearby Freeport, where one pole had been snapped in two, the upper half balancing precariously on the bottom half. HL&P workers were scrambling to restore power, but said it could be days before everyone had electricity again. Much of the Longhorn Meadows Apartments complex lost its roof during the night. Pink insulation is scattered across the parking lot, and residents like Richard Noble, who stayed through the hurricane, seem dazed.
Very windy, didn't get much sleep, and kind of watching the roofs blow off and stuff like that. It's kind of strange.
Stormy winds blew the windows out of some buildings and toppled heavy signs at others. Though there was damage almost everywhere, there is a hopeful note. For the first time in several days, the sun was trying to greet the area, even before most residents had even begun to think about cleanup. Jamie O'Rourke, Eyewitness News.
Galveston Island is engulfed in darkness tonight. There is no electricity in the island, no water. It is eerie down there, almost reminiscent of a war zone, complete with destruction, a blackout, and armed troops patrolling the streets. There is a curfew in effect in Galveston, and Sylvan Rodriguez has a live report on what's going on down there now. Sylvan?
Thank you, Dave. You described it very accurately. As a matter of fact, the light we're using for this broadcast is probably the brightest light on the island right now. As you can see behind me, the streets are fairly dark. Every once in a while, you will see some traffic going by. Much of that traffic are the police officers in marked units and officers in unmarked units, many of them with the spotlights looking at both sides of the street. That curfew was to have begun at 8 o'clock. At about 8:30, we could see some thinning of the traffic. And now at 10 o'clock, it appears that much of the traffic has dwindled down. However, there are still some people roaming the streets. The National Guardsmen we talked with said they had heard rumors about a curfew, but were not told officially to enforce it. Mainly, the Guardsmen made their presence known to discourage looters. Galveston police made efforts to get people off the street. Earlier, just before nightfall, long lines formed in front of just about every little store in town that was open. The main item was ice, going for $1.37 a bag and half melted. How badly do you need it?
Well, to cool my milk for the baby at the house and drink water.
Down the street at Johnny's Food Market, fresh bread was going fast, and ice had already run out. Customers had to wait in line for 30 minutes here, and if food markets do not open tomorrow, things could get very serious. And Dave, the other consideration is that because electricity has been out now for about 24 hours, much of the food inside those food markets could be spoiled by now, so there could be a food shortage. Tomorrow will be a day to find out just exactly what people who stayed on the island will do for food. Well, there was a lot of destruction here on this island. Surely the estimates will go very, very high into the millions of dollars. Would like to show you some of that now. Much of the destruction involved businesses right along the sea wall. That appears to be the area that was hit the hardest. The tides, we are told, got up 2 feet over the seawall. Much of the debris is still in the street right now, making driving tonight very, very hazardous. Some of the buildings were just completely blown away. From Sky Eye, we took a view of the west side of Galveston Island, the lower end of Galveston Island, and as you can see, there was destruction just about everywhere, with roofs being blown away and especially windows being blown right through.
By Friday, the full impact of this storm had become tragically apparent. 10, maybe more, storm-related deaths, damage in the hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps rivaling Frederick's record $2.3 billion toll back in 1979. But we are a hardy, resilient people here in Texas, and the rebuilding of the lives of those who suffered from this storm began immediately.
These resort homes are built 10 feet above the ground. However, wind, not water, did most of the damage here. As we continue to fly over West Beach, the feeling is just incredible. Looking down, house after house destroyed, entire neighborhoods blown away by the strong winds. It's almost as if 10 or 12 tornadoes hit this area and danced all night. Many of the residents who returned today are convinced tornadoes did most of the damage, but there were no eyewitnesses. All residents evacuated, and in spite of the damage, no lives were lost. Scott Henson has lived here 20 years. He and his son used a pickup to move their roof from the street.
It was unbelievable. I knew we'd have damage, but I didn't think it'd be this much just from the wind. But apparently we got a tornado in it. So I didn't expect this much, but I'm pleased it wasn't more.
Are you going to rebuild now?
Certainly. Maybe for another 20 years.
These communities have attractive names like Sea Island, Pirates Beach, and Jamaica Beach, but there was little that was attractive after taking on the eye of a hurricane. And he vowed to build again, a spirit perhaps signified by the lone Texas flag that remained flying over an otherwise destroyed home. From West Beach, Sylvan Rodriguez, Eyewitness News.
17-year-old Michael Lopez and 21-year-old Sergio Rodriguez became the 7th and 8th victims of Hurricane Alicia. Their bodies were pulled from Hunting Bayou by angry family members. Angry because they say they got no assistance from police.
They were in that water, and the stupid cops, they never did nothing about it. We called them since 5:30, since they fell in there, and they never came. They couldn't pass the water because it was too deep. What about us? My husband was out here since yesterday looking for us.
The family said they were told by police the water was too high. Further east in Channel View, authorities fear the death toll may rise even more. 18 barges in the San Jacinto River were swept away by high waters, and they spared nothing that lie in their path. And in the Brownwood subdivision in Baytown, 600 homes were flooded by torrential rains and high water. Even the city's emergency center lost contact with the outside world in a massive power outage. Debbie Johnson, Eyewitness News.
The governor, Mayor Whitmire, and a herd of other officials and reporters boarded National Guard helicopters for a first-hand look. They saw the hundreds of millions of dollars damage to Houston. Then the hastily assembled Air Force headed to Galveston, where Mayor Gus Manuel is still defending his downplaying of the hurricane's potential and his refusal to